Hi, everyone. I'm Perry Collins. I am the interim chair of the Department of Digital Partnerships and Strategies here at the University of Florida Libraries. I also work very closely with the Digital Library of the Caribbean. I play a couple of different roles with that project. Primarily, I'm our liaison on rights related issues as well as open educational resources. And more recently, I'm also the project director of a major grant we're working on called Revitalizing the Digital Library of the Caribbean, and you'll hear a lot more about that today.
And I'm Tanya Rios, Project Coordinator for the Digital Library of the Caribbean at the University of Florida. In this presentation, we will be sharing about the Digital Library of the Caribbean's Open Educational Resources Stipend Project, made possible with generous support from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. We'll first provide background on DLOC and the history of efforts within the DLOC network to create and share teaching materials in Caribbean studies. We'll then introduce the new OER stipend project, including our central goals and recent accomplishments, placing emphasis on the ways in which DLOC collaborates with its community of partners and educators across multiple languages and geographies. We'll talk about our approach to community outreach and engagement, which is essential to this project and to all of DLOC's work. We'll touch on roles and responsibilities of our OER Advisory Committee, which includes outreach as well as review, selection, and peer review of OERs. We'll also talk about the ways we are leveraging the services of the Library Press at the University of Florida. And finally, we'll include a short showcase of some of the wonderful OERs being developed this year and next.
The Digital Library of the Caribbean was established in 2004, so almost 20 years ago now, at a planning meeting of ACURL, the Association of Caribbean Academic Libraries. It really started under the leadership of Judith Rogers, the former director of the University of the Virgin Islands Libraries, in consultation with the University of Florida, Florida International University, and 6 other founding partners. And the idea here has really remained our primary goal, which is to think about how to collaboratively work together with partner institutions to develop a digital library of materials by, for, and about the Caribbean and the Greater Caribbean diasporas. There are now over 4 million pages of content. About 1 million of those pages are from newspapers. There are many different languages represented: Spanish, English, and French, but also Dutch, Portuguese, Hebrew, and Haitian Creole. So today we have this amazing collection. But even from the beginning, it's been somewhat difficult to navigate so much material. This is a common challenge of digital libraries, particularly those like ours that involve many different partners, often scanning and creating metadata and contributing materials independently. While we have a lot of standards and we have capacity and support, at our operations hub at the University of Florida for some of this technical work, that doesn't really solve the problem of how to delve in and really make use of this material in a meaningful way in the classroom without quite a bit of time investment on the part of instructors. And so for quite some time now, about a decade or so, um, individuals within the DLOC community have started to think about what would it mean to develop more robust support for teachers and for college and university educators. At the West Indian Literature Conference in 2016, there was the spark of an idea to actually develop an institute that would bring together people in person to focus on just this issue, on digital pedagogy and the use of digital resources in the classroom. And in this case, focus specifically on the higher education classroom, especially. So before Tanya and I even arrived at the University of Florida or began our work with ULOC, our colleagues were very busy applying for funding to the National Endowment for the Humanities to actually develop an institute like this that would bring people together and discuss digital pedagogy in different disciplinary contexts with different methods and strategies in play over the course of a week, and then ask attendees to go back to their classrooms and apply what they had discussed and learned, refining or even developing courses that were based on some of this material and that hopefully incorporated collections from the Digital Library of the Caribbean or other platforms as well. Unfortunately, this was a really challenging time. Um, Everyone went back. There was a major hurricane that hit the Bahamas very hard. Two of our attendees had to adapt pretty dramatically the work that they were doing. Then, of course, in March of 2020, as lockdown hit during COVID, there were major disruptions to all of the work happening. That said, we had an incredible group of attendees and two wonderful graduate students on the project who were able to keep up communication online, to reflect and write down their reflections of the Institute, and actually to contribute back quite a few materials, assignments, lesson plans, syllabi, experiences of their work with students, including a number of wonderful student projects. And we put those on a website, and that's really been something that has been a bit of an inspiration for us as we think about next steps for this work. And so, sort of fortuitously, after some preliminary conversations with the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, not just on this project, but on a number of different initiatives, we were invited to submit an application to them. And this became what is now a $2 million initiative that we're working on, revitalizing the Digital Library of the Caribbean. We said revitalizing not only because some of the challenges I've mentioned in terms of developing a set of teaching resources, but also that as DLOC has grown and grown, it of course becomes more and more difficult to do the kind of consistent training, professional development, outreach, and just day to day communication between a huge group of partners and an even larger group of patrons and users, whether they're academic researchers, family historians, students, or others writing to us and looking for more information about materials in DLOC. So, as part of this grant proposal, we knew we had a real opportunity to incorporate a program that would compensate educators and scholars to develop open educational resources in Caribbean studies. This was really exciting and honestly something that was really close to my heart ever since I had started working with DLOC. We were able to really build on the work of the NEH Institute and leverage a lot of those relationships to think about how to do this the right way. In the end, our grant proposal included about $250,000 devoted to work on OER. That included staff, translation, print on demand, and of course, most importantly, stipends for those who would actually be developing materials.
Over the course of the 3-year Revitalizing DLOC grant period, DLOC will issue 2 calls for proposals awarding over $100,000 to individuals and groups interested in creating and sharing OER and Caribbean studies. Some of the principal goals for this project include building and enhancing DLOC's open access library of teaching resources for Caribbean studies, promoting collaboration and open education principles and their application in Caribbean studies, as well as enhancing and contextualizing the collections in DLOC. So, broadly promoting ethical use and reuse of digital Caribbean collections in teaching and learning. We define OER broadly and simply as material freely available online and useful for teaching and learning. Just to give an idea of the OER types we're collecting, in our first call for proposals, which was issued in November 2022, The OER types we indicated in the call included course modules, primary source sets, classroom editions or readers, syllabi, assignments or lesson plans, data sets, recorded short lectures, and digital exhibits or websites. Review and selection of proposals is done in collaboration with the DLOC OER Advisory Committee. The advisory committee is our group of external experts in Caribbean studies, instructional design, and digital pedagogy. Besides reviewing funding proposals and making selections, this group also supports the development of the call and the criteria used for selection. And importantly, they also support broad dissemination and circulation of the call. So the committee plays a significant role in outreach and promotion, ensuring that the call and information about the project in general is made available through a variety of communication channels across the field. In addition to that, the advisory committee members will peer review and provide constructive feedback on completed OERs. And to emphasize that outreach and community engagement is central to this project and its overarching goals to support collaboration and sharing in Caribbean studies teaching. As we previously mentioned, DLOC benefits from a large network of partners and users. And as a post-custodial library organization, collaboration and capacity building are upheld as guiding principles for the organization, and community engagement is central to all of its goals and activities. Our approach to outreach for the OER stipend project draws on the strengths of the existing DLOC network and actively seeks to build new connections. There's a special interest and focus and intention on building more connections with individuals and institutions in the Caribbean. In making sure that our first call had broad reach, we made sure to have contact with educators as well as librarians, archivists, and graduate students. We made contact with academic departments and centers, professional associations and societies, community organizations engaged in documenting and archiving historical and cultural heritage collections, Caribbean Studies Network listservs and forums, and a variety of independent digital projects invested in expanding the study of the Caribbean. Both the DLOC Advisory Committee, the OER Advisory Committee, and the Scholarly Advisory Board were very important partners to making sure that this project had reach in the Caribbean studies community. These are the criteria used in review and selection. We place priority on OER that would build upon or complement DLOC partner collections specifically, and also on OER that centered histories and contemporary topics that had been structurally marginalized from historical, scholarly, or popular narratives of the Caribbean. This year, DLOC awarded stipends of $2,000 and $5,000 to 15 OER projects, which are currently in development and will be completed, translated, and digitally published by fall 2024. These listed on the slide are just a few of the projects, but I list these to demonstrate the diversity of resource types, languages, and content areas, as well as geographic coverage that these exciting OER projects represent.
As the operations hub for DLOC, one of the underlying questions that we had when we began the Revitalizing DLOC grant was to think about what kinds of services or offerings might we layer on top of our really critical role as the host for all of the digital content that actually sits within DLOC. We had started to get more and more requests for things like web hosting, and this sparked some questions for us about the role that our library publishing imprint, Library Press at UF, might actually play in co-publishing alongside DLOC. So on the one hand, leveraging some of the capacity and skill sets that we developed as publishers, largely serving a campus-based audience, and then putting that in conversation with all of the broad knowledge and expertise available through our DLOC network. And so this grant was a great opportunity for us to think about what it might look like for Library Press to publish OER alongside DLOC.
Finally, and in conclusion, we want to take the opportunity to showcase some OER creators talking about their wonderful projects. On this first slide, you'll hear librarians from the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras campus talk about their OER project in collaboration with DLOC partner institution Casa Pueblo. And on the next slide, you'll hear members of the Puerto Rico syllabus talk about their OER project collaboration with DLOC partner institution Archivo Histórico de Vieques. These projects are special because they demonstrate how educators build upon, enhance, and create with DLOC collections, and in these cases collaborate directly with Caribbean-based contributing partner institutions to co-create teaching resources that highlight and contextualize their unique and important collections. Thank you so much for watching, and please reach out if you have any questions.